All right, welcome back, everybody. Mark Young here, computer science and IT teacher at Webster Groves High School. This is the third installment of our web design video series discussing how do you take a brackets local repository project and connect it to a GitHub repository. We'll have many more videos on discussing the collaboration part, which I know is important these days, especially in the classroom. Teachers are assigning projects and we really want to encourage collaboration, and how do you do that? So we'll get to that. This video now is going to take a look at the GitHub side of things. So I'm already logged into my GitHub account. If you are logging in for the hopefully at least the second time, and you already created this repository in our first part of this series, you should see that we have our project listed right there. And also you should see it says HTML. Since we successfully pushed files in part 2 of this video series, we should now see the files that we push on the GitHub server, which we're viewing through their webpage, and we should also see those comments. If you remember in part 2, I said while the comments, it's not critical what you type. You're not required to type any specific comments. Long term, for the purposes of collaboration, it's going to be important for your teammates to know maybe when you pushed it, so they can tell if you've worked on it in a while, if that you've made a change that's more recent than their changes. And then this description here, the commit description, is going to be important because now they can actually see why that change was made on that date and on that time. So if you remember in part 2, I just put initial commit because that was the first time I'd ever posted this file, and there wasn't a whole lot of code to it. Okay, so now what I have here is I have some basic code for a web page. I'm not going to go into HTML. That's another video series about how to code in HTML. It's a pretty easy language. But what I've done is I've gone into that index page and I've typed in some initial code. I've already saved it and I pushed it, and we'll do that again here in a minute so you get some practice. But now if I go over to GitHub, I can actually look at the code by clicking on my index file, and there is that exact code. Okay, so while they do give you the ability to edit code on the GitHub end, I generally wouldn't recommend it because then your local repository doesn't have the latest code, and then you're going to have to fetch or pull down that code. It is this teacher's opinion, who's relatively new to GitHub, is that it's probably easier to work on the local end and then just always push to GitHub than it is to work on GitHub's webpage and then try to fetch your updates. One of the other benefits too is using an IDE, an integrated development environment on a computer, gives you code correction, gives you the ability to use all kinds of extensions and plugins. So I think it's more beneficial probably to work locally when you're developing your web page than it is to try to go in here and edit. But nonetheless, I wanted to point it out. It is there if you wanted to make a change. You do have the ability to delete a file. Again, I probably would still do that locally, but you can see here is all of the code that we have here. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and maybe I'm going to add a link just so I can update my page and then commit it for staging, and then also put it on the GitHub server. So I'm just going to make a link here to maybe Google's webpage, right? It's one we all know from heart. Thanks, Google. Okay, so there it is, and I'll put, I don't know, click here for Google. I could type today. Promise I can type. Okay, so there it is. I've got my link set for Google, and I'm thinking, okay, I've made a major change to this web page. Maybe it's near the end of the class period, or in the real world, maybe it's the end of the shift, or going on a break, or whatever. I'm going to choose to save. Now, before I do that, you'll see down here in the bottom, I can't commit because since I haven't saved using brackets, the local repository thinks it is completely up to date. So the first step in order to make a semi-permanent change to a file is we need to go into brackets and say, I want to save. I generally recommend saving all in case I have multiple files that are open. You'll notice that once I save this file with this addition, that it says on here that there is a file on here that has been modified. Now, we have not done anything on the GitHub side, so if I were to go here and just refresh this page, you'll notice there is no link added here. There's no link. And that's because the work that we've done in brackets has only been local. It's only saved in that little website test2 folder that I have over here. So if I want to save it locally, I'm just going to say, hey, I want to commit this. And then I'm going to get that message that says, why are you committing it? That message corresponds to this spot right here. So that way my users know, my collaborators, my teammates know what the heck this push was for. So I'm going, or this commit was for. So I'm going to say, added a new link to Google. Okay, you don't have to write a paper here, students. And also in computer science, we don't have to always be grammatically correct. We can use phrases, we can use fragments. It's just to let us know what the heck that was for. I will choose OK. And you say, okay, what did that do? Well, if I refresh, let's go back in here, load it again. If I refresh, did it do anything? No. That commit command and the save, it changed the local repository. But now if I want to move it from the commit staging area, which is, if I use a baseball analogy, it's like being in the on-deck circle. It's not ready to go to home plate and really take some swings here. If I want to be able to commit this to GitHub and save it long term so my teammates, my collaborators can have access to my new code revisions, I need to now go in here and push. Okay, so that's what this button is for. So I will say git push. It's should have saved your credentials unless in part 2 you took my advice and did not type this information in so nobody else can walk by your desk and make changes. I'm going to press OK. I'm ready to go. And this is now using git commands, which was that software that we installed in video part 1. So git is working in the background because we instructed the plugin, the git plugin, to work from brackets. All this is happening so we don't have to use 3 different programs. It says the status was done. It put it locally in the master branch because we have not talked about branches or making any additional branches. So we're working in a place really we shouldn't be working in because this is where the final project goes. But for right now, we're keeping it simple. It pushed it to the master branch locally in this folder, and then it put it on the remote branch on GitHub server. And then the big sigh of relief is it says done and successfully pushed. Okay, press OK. Now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say, okay, let's refresh this. And what do you know? There is the update to the code. Our push truly was successful. And now any of my other teammates that are maybe working at home, if they go into this, they'll notice that there were some updates to the project. In fact, they can even go into traffic, look at the commits and go, oh, wait, there's a 5th commit. Who made a commit? Oh, it looks like Mark Young made a commit, just 2 minutes ago, and it tells them what file. And if they want to, they can pull a file down. Don't confuse that with a pull request, something completely different. But they can actually go and now fetch that file on their end and have their code completely up to date. If your teammates are using this program and connected to your GitHub account, they should eventually see that there was a change made down here and that their local repository is what they call being behind. Being behind means that there is an update to a file or files on a GitHub repository that are further advanced than your file. They've got changes you don't have. If they're working in separate branches, no big deal. But if it's on the master branch and you're working in the master branch, you could potentially end up pushing a change over their changes. And that's what we'll get into something later where we talk about differences, choosing which file we're going to keep. GitHub, it's fascinating how they will see changes from 2 different developers and allow either the supervisor on the team or whoever the administrator is to decide, are we going to keep one teammate's changes over another? Are we going to merge them into one? Really pretty cool. Again, another video. But now that I've made that change, again, you see over here, there's that comment, added a link to google.com. So now I know that it is up there and available for all of my teammates to see. Okay, so that is part 3. We made a change to a file, and then we learned, didn't mean to do all that clicking. We made a change to our file. We committed it to the staging area so that it could be saved locally. And since it's sitting in the staging area, we were able to push it from our local repository up onto the GitHub server. Okay, that's this video.